Hi everyone. We're just gonna have a few more minutes of waiting to let people show up, and then we'll get started. Hmm? Okay. Hi, can everyone hear me? Hello? Hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Um, yeah, except you need a host code, not a participant.
The number you have dialed is not.
Actually, know what a host code is, unless it's on here. I guess try dialing in and see if it has instructions for the host. I just don't know if it's gonna actually start without a host joining.
Welcome to AT&T teleconference service. Please enter your access code followed by the pound sign. The host has not yet arrived. Please stand by.
assume this one, 7251704.
I'm gonna check this one real quick.
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by... There are 7 participants on the call, including you. You're joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press star pound.
Good morning, or afternoon rather.
Hi everyone, who do we have on the line?
Yes, this is from DHCS.
This is Steve on the line with DHCS.
This is Bonnie from DHCS. This is Joan Burns with Maximus.
All right, thank you very much. We're just gonna try to figure out a few more things. We've got a couple people that may be on a different line that we're trying to get them dialed in. Are you able to see the chat messages that we sent out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna send one more to make sure that everybody's on the same phone number. One moment, please.
It's muted. I just muted.
That it might be on that training line rather than on the webinar conference line, which is so confusing.
Yeah.
Everyone, please make sure you are on the 1-877-402. Are we on mute?
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter if someone from Maximus is on this one? Because then they're learning all the searches that they really have no business doing normally. I don't think they'll have access to it, will they? Maximus? What do I have access to?
They'll still be limited by their access, but I don't think. I mean, the cues in the beginning will apply to them.
12577.
The rehearing stuff won't. I don't know. I guess it's your call. I mean, there's going to be some stuff that would be included in their training and some stuff that wouldn't.
I think it's an access thing. She kind of does, I can tell. I think my concern is if, and maybe this has been corrected, but there was a time when the question was whether or not if someone can search for things, the only question is should they or do they know that they can. So like in the JLJ training, we tried to stay away from the questions about, well, can I search this? Because there's some people who just want to know everything. And frankly, I think they should be locked out of searches that they have no, they shouldn't be seeing. But So that's my concern. If such a person is on there, are they able to access DHCS level things?
Well,
So who would they
yeah. I mean,
be?
through the advanced search and stuff, they would be able to.
We don't.
I
Do we
didn't
have
get
a
their
webinar
name.
for them?
Yeah.
They should be in the DHCS contractors ones, which is
Oh,
Wednesday.
there it
Wednesday, I
is.
think.
Twice on
Yeah.
Wednesday and
The 22nd.
and the 13th and
How would I
14th.
send a message to them specifically? Who was it from Maximus?
Joan Burns, I think. Yeah, at maximus.com.
So maybe just message say they're in the wrong webinar. Theirs is on Wednesday.
I think she's the only one.
Was it Joan? All right, we have 12 attendees and we had 7 people on the phone.
Yeah, they might be. They might be grouped up. Do we have to?
It says Maximus, we are contracted for the fair hearing process for DMHC.
That's true. But
Yes, they're the ones that will represent MCQMD in the hearings, but they're not DHCS. They're a subcontractor.
So,
So they should be in the same webinar as the plans because their role is exactly like those of the plans.
That's it.
okay.
okay, I think I should probably start before they start losing it.
I think we should too.
All right, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We'll go ahead and get started. To begin, my name is Scott Brown. I am the co-product owner on the ACMS project. Today I'll be showing you DHCS's interaction with the ACMS system. Really, I hope to be able to cover anything that you guys would do on a regular basis. If there's any questions or anything, feel free to ask. I'm going to try to keep this mostly on schedule, but I'm okay with answering questions here and there. In the room, I also have with me Juliet McCauley. She's probably well known to most of you, but very knowledgeable in DHCS. So certain questions I may defer to her to ask. And I do have Katie Rodriguez in here helping me out to answer questions that are asked via the webinar interface as well. So she'll be monitoring that if you guys have questions during the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. So ACMS is really intended to be a tool for communication between the California Department of Social Services and DHCS. Right now, DHCS doesn't have any ability to partake in our hearings process from a system perspective. It's really just kind of emails and various other communications without being able to actively like view or check the status of appeals. So that is something you will be able to do with ACMS. You can log in, you can see appeals that are assigned to your unit. You can check the statuses on them. You can see documents attached to them. You can see decisions when they're released, and all of the work that you might be interested in doing or knowing about should be organized into nice groups called queues for you. So to start out, I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the handout that's attached to the webinar and the actual live system. So I'll just kind of go through the webinar and then we'll jump over to the system and do it for real. So this is what the login page looks like. Pretty basic. You just we'll provide everybody with a username and password before go live. That's all being handled separately. So once you're logged in, you're presented with your dashboard. Your dashboard looks like this. Get this out of the way. It's intended to be fairly clean. Mostly DHCS is interested in obtaining information, and some of that's for your knowledge, some of it's to facilitate communication with CDSS. The basic layout here, you've got your dashboard searching for claimants and appeals. If you know an appeal case number, you can search for it directly here. If you're searching for a claimant that you know has an appeal, you can do that here. And probably more importantly are the queues on the side over here. And these are categorized to make them a little bit more intuitive so you can find what you're looking for. The case view history is just a view of the last appeals that you visited. My assigned tasks will be any tasks that are assigned directly to you as a user, not as an agency. My cases is going to be similar, but this is specifically for appeals where you're the assigned hearing representative. So for DHCS, this might not apply so much as to probably like the health plans and people like that. So my assigned tasks is probably a little more useful for you guys. Cases without a hearing rep. This one will show appeals that have been online but have not been assigned out to either a DHCS or a health plan user yet. The following that one is the SOP needed. This is when it has been assigned out. This is the user whose responsibility it is to actually upload the SOP for that appeal. And then something we'll see a little bit later, the proposed decisions. This one will show any decisions that CDSS has uploaded for DHCS to review. All of these queues should be pre-sorted, like pre-filtered by your responsible agency. I'm currently logged in as a DHCS user, so this is only showing me DHCS appeals. I can show you over here on admin that there's really a lot more here, but as a DHCS user, it's only showing me just a few. Some of the other queues, these are all for rehearings. This one you guys won't use, we'll take that off. But this rehearing review, I guess DHCS really has like a central group that handles the initial rehearing requests and then kind of divvies those out to the divisions that need to address them. As far as I know, that process will remain the same, and then this is really the tool that they'll use to help them do that. Finally, the calendars and hearings queue. This is a really useful one for keeping track of appeals that are scheduled or have been recently heard but aren't yet closed out. This is also filterable by hearing date if there's a specific set you want to see for a specific day. The calendar, if you know which calendar it's on, most of you guys will be on a Scopes phone hearing. But you can also use the box up here to specifically filter out, for instance, like this ACA one here. We don't want to see that, so we'll just say, Medi-Cal. That'll show us only what we're searching for. So if you're assigned, for instance, for the rehearings, if you're assigned to the greater DHCS organizational unit and you have access to see all DHCS appeals. Was there a question?
No.
Okay.
Just asking them to mute the phone.
Oh. So So if you have access to see the greater set of DHCS appeals, but you're looking for a specific set, you can use this search here. It's really a filter, but you'll add a term here, and it'll filter this list based on that term. And you can do multiple terms to get a very specific list that you want to see. And then you can delete anything out of there to bring back the full list. So that's kind of went through the queues, searching. I left this part in as more really a reference for you to go and kind of check out, like, just so you have an understanding of the way that claimants and appeals are handled in the system. Claimants, people, are one thing, and appeals are another thing that are attached to the claimants. So one claimant, one person can have multiple appeals. And it's just kind of helpful to know that when you're navigating the system, to understand that, when some of the data is presented to you, to know that an appeal record has an attached claimant to it, not that it's all one single record. And that becomes important later on when you're doing some of the various searches you might do. But so I'm not really going to go over actually creating any of that right now. I just wanted to leave this in here so that you guys had some insight into how that actually works. So one of the first things you'll do when you log in is to assign people to appeals so that they can keep track of them, that they know they're supposed to work on them. This particular queue here, the cases without a hearing rep, this will show essentially any appeals that don't have that hearing rep assignment yet. Some of these will go down to below, managed care, for example. They'll go down to a healthcare plan, and it'll really be the healthcare plan user that will be assigned to this appeal because it's their responsibility to provide the SOP. This queue directly flows into that SOP need. So from the queue here, you'd select an appeal, and then, so this is the basic appeal screen. It's got various information. There's no hearing scheduled yet, so that's blank. It's got the appeal status, and then if you wanted to see like the detailed issue on the appeal, you'd go to the issue tab, and you can kind of explore that. Really, the most useful ones are the appeal tab, the document tab, and the issue tab for what you guys are going to be looking at. But from here, there's a button down here on the bottom. When you hover over it, it says Search Hearing Representatives. And this should be showing me this was working a minute ago. So this should be showing me essentially this user so that I can assign them. Let me see if I can do it a different way real quick. You know what? Let's try this. No, they're not appearing there either. Okay, well.
Do it for county.
Let me try. Cases without a hearing rep. So I can kind of show you what it looks like here. So it would bring up a list of the users that are available to be assigned as hearing reps. This is obviously for Alameda, not for DHCS. But as an example, you would select the user, select them as the hearing representative, and then they would be shown as the hearing rep. After saving, that creates the submit SOP task, and that task is what makes appeals appear on this SOP needed list here. So from here, whenever the SOP is written, whoever's responsible for that, they would just navigate here to the appeal, and then using the Documents tab down here, they can create a new document. And this list isn't showing everything right now, but there's a selection for SOP. You would select the SOP, select your document, and upload that. So then the SOP would be available for CDSS to see, for the claimant to see if they have an account to log in and view their appeals online. Once that's added, we really would want to close out this task just so that it stops appearing on that list. So that's really kind of sort of the basic like finding and assigning work. Again, when you first log in, you know, a lot of the stuff that's here is really to give you an idea of the work that is out there to be completed, the work that's directly assigned to you to be completed, and any work that's new. Let's see what we got here. So we saw that. Saw selecting a hearing representative. And we saw uploading an SOP.
Hi, excuse me.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you could slow down a little bit? We're having a hard time following your movement.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
So right now I'm kind of more or less referencing the document, and then doing the actual display in the system. So when I go back to the document here, it's just so that I can kind of catch up to where I am in the demo. This document is attached to the webinar if you guys wanted to use it to follow along. So I showed assigning the hearing rep and uploading the SOP. So in the webinar here, I'm just kind of catching myself up to where we are in the actual live system. So on any appeal, the buttons down here are useful if you need to assign a hearing representative, or if you needed to search for documents or upload new documents. Let's do it here actually. So say you navigate to an appeal. If you need to upload an SOP, or if you wanted to search the documents that were on the appeal, the Documents tab is the place to do that. Later on, when a decision is written, only the final version of the decision is added to the Documents tab. So the initial written decision will be in the system, but the one that's actually viewable to people will be a PDF that's created by the system from the original document. And that's the one that's actually available for the claimants if they log into the system. That final version is the one that's mailed out. But the Documents tab again is one of the best places for notification. It's the best place to, if there's documents that need to be shared or are part of the appeal, any documents that the claimant themselves upload, they'll all live here. So that's the best place to find any of that.
Is this also where we would find the proposed decisions for our review?
It is not, but I will show you where that is. So the reason that the proposed decisions don't show up here is because if they did, the claimant would be able to see them. So those actually live on a different decision object that I'll show you in just a little bit. So that you have access to them, but so that the claimant does not. Okay, so uploading documents. Again, you would go to that document tab, create new document. You can do it from there too. Add in your details, select your document, and that's about it for that. I heard earlier that it's not super common for DHCS to request postponement, but if you needed to, for some reason, if there was an emergency or if somebody that really needed to be part of the hearing wasn't available, let me see if this is going to let me do it. It's not, but so this one's not letting me do it because this appeal is not scheduled. But a lot of these action type things, like requesting a postponement, they're all done via this task tab. There's not a whole lot of these that you guys will be interested in. Mostly a postponement. But so from here, you would choose to request a postponement, add in any details that are necessary, and that would come here for probably a presiding judge to make a determination on to see if there's a good reason to postpone that hearing. Again, I don't.
Is this the area where you would be able to see if a beneficiary has withdrawn his or her hearing?
Yes, sort of. So the actual withdrawal would be processed via the task. So this would be a way for us to, we use the tasks in general to push an appeal kind of along a workflow. So selecting here the withdrawal request, this would enable us to close the appeal as withdrawn. And when that happened, it would update the appeal status here to withdrawn. Also,
where is the place to go and find out what the current status of a hearing is?
So do you mean an appeal or a hearing? Like, sorry, I didn't catch that. The phone was a little bit low. One more time.
Where is the easiest place if you were to log on to the system if you wanted to know if a beneficiary if there was a state fair hearing scheduled or rescheduled or what the current status of a hearing is?
So if you're the easiest way to do that is if you're actually assigned to an appeal, because that will make it show up.
We assigned to it because we're from DHCS, but if we're kind of seeing like on behalf of the mental health plan,
Yeah.
what's happening if we get questions, we just want to know how it works.
So there are several ways to do that. Probably the easiest one to show is the calendars and hearings queue. So this is good if you're kind of checking this regularly, or if there's a particular appeal that you're kind of watching or something. So right now, it's not likely that a DHCS user would be the assigned hearing rep on an appeal, but in the future, we'll have the ability, just after go live, actually, we'll have the ability to assign not just like the hearing rep from the health plan, but also a representative from DHCS. And that will enable you to essentially kind of claim that appeal for monitoring if it's something that falls sort of within your purview, or if it's something that that you specifically want to keep an eye on. And in that case, the My Cases really would be the best place for it. This shows the status of the appeal, and so if it becomes scheduled, you'll see it scheduled there.
And is this kind of the same screen that other, like, the plans would see, or is this something that only DHCS would see?
It's very, very similar to what the plans would see. The big differences are that the plans won't have the rehearing. They might see that one as requested, but they wouldn't be able to go in and take any action on that. But the basic, they wouldn't have this one either, the proposed decisions. But the basic look of it and most of these queues would all be available to them too.
And if you don't get a proposed decision from a plan, what will you be doing if you don't get a proposed decision? How is that handled?
I'm sorry, did you say proposed decision from the plan?
Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry, a statement of position.
Oh, I see. Well, if the plan doesn't upload it to SFT, we would likely send an email to you and to the plan telling them that we need that document. Our staff look for the SOPs a few days ahead of the hearing, and when it's not there, they're contacting the parties to say, where is the SOP? And we would copy you.
Okay,
Is this Catherine?
so we can go and see if it's been uploaded or not.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, yes. Is this Catherine?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay,
I got
yeah.
it.
So, hi. So we would copy you on that email so you would know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You've got good ears.
Okay, so postponement. That's a pretty short one. Just sorry. A lot of tasks are done via that task menu. Most of those I don't really think apply, but if you needed to request a postponement for whatever reason, you could do it there. So one thing that I've been showing you, I've referenced it a couple times now, is this. It used to be called a day of hearing queue, which was a little bit confusing. So we kind of renamed it to calendars and hearings. You can see that here. So this is really helpful for knowing on a particular day the appeals that are set to be heard. I guess the location doesn't matter so much for you guys, but you can filter by if you did have in-person ones that you wanted to know about, you could search for those. If there was a specific hearing date that you wanted to see, you can search for that. And that's all part of this calendars and hearings queue that I've shown you a couple times. Again, it's all filterable and sortable. You can search specifically for things just to show only what you want to see. And then this run report button will generate a report of what's shown here as an extract, essentially, for if you wanted a paper copy of whatever you were looking at. So let's see. So the release decisions. It's a little bit out of order, but using the advanced search, you can search for really quite a lot of things. Generating a sort of a report of decisions that have been released in a specific time period is useful here. Really, since all of our decisions are going to go through you in the first place, you'll pretty much know when they're released, unless it's being alternated, and then there's a little bit more of a process to it. But essentially, if we upload a proposed decision and it's reviewed by DHCS, DHCS has the option, whatever unit it is, has the option of accepting the decision as written and just releasing it there on the spot. So if you wanted a report of those, you can follow the steps in the slide here to sort of generate that. And if we have time towards the end, I'll kind of go over a little more detail about how to use the advanced search. But there's a really good example here in the PowerPoint for you to follow along. Okay, so before we do rehearings, I'm going to see if I can show you the proposed decision. See if there's any here. That's a little bit weird, but we'll go with it. So, let's see here. I'm going to see if I can bring this up so you can kind of see what it looks like from the state side. So this appeal is heard and is pending a decision. This part you guys don't have to worry about really, but just to give you some context as to what happens before it goes over to you. Once a judge has finished with the hearing and goes and writes the decision, they write the decision the same way they do now, using the same tool they do now. They write that decision, and then they come in here and they will upload it. So they'll choose their document that they've written. They'll indicate a few aspects of it, in this case, the hearing that it belongs to, whether or not there's a compliance, which is essentially just something that somebody has to do because the decision says that they have to do it, whether that's going to be required or not, and then whatever the outcome of their decision is. So there we go. So once we do this part, some of our clerical staff will determine whether where it goes from here. If it's an internal, like it's proposed because one of our judges is new, we would do our own review and we would adopt it from here. But since this is DHCS, we would send it over to you. Before it goes to you, we do just a QA on it to make sure that the decision just kind of looks as nice as it can. The tables are all aligned and that kind of stuff. The reason for that really is just that if a decision happens to sit for 30 days and it gets released by operation of law, we already know that it looks good and it's ready to be released. So once we've done that QA, now we pass it over to you. So once it's here, it should, yeah, so it shows up under this proposed decisions external list. Right. So essentially this queue is a way for you to know that we have written a decision and that it's being passed over to DHCS for review. Again, this should be all filtered by the division and everything that you're in, so it should go to the appropriate place. Once you select this, it'll navigate you to this screen, which is the decision, the object for the decision. And right here, you can click to download the decision document and to do your review. If you're happy with how it looks and you just want to accept it, then from the action menu here, you would just do adopt proposed decision. And when you save that, the system is going to create a cover page for it and turn the cover page and the decision document into a PDF. And that PDF is what's attached to the decision tab, so that everybody can see it. That's the one that gets mailed out to the claimant and the AR, and that's the one that's available if the claimant logs into their account and goes and views the documents on their appeal. So, alternatively, oh, no pun intended. If it's determined that you guys want to alternate it, the communication to alternate would still kind of happen offline. That would be however that happens, but that would come back to us, and then we would write the alternate, and then once we've done that, we would choose the alternated decision file, upload that, make any changes to the outcome and the compliance that are necessary, and then we would save this. And this is going to do a similar thing to just having accepted it as it was proposed. You can see here that this is that final PDF document. But uniquely to the alternate decision, this document also has both the alternate that was written and the original proposed decision gets attached with the big void watermark on it. And the cover pages used to contain the hearing rights, kind of at the bottom here. That has been removed and added as an attachment to the front, to the top of every decision, essentially. So this bit with the appeal rights has been expanded a little, and will be included with any decision that's generated and sent out. So that's really, it's pretty simple from your guys' standpoint. Really, you check the queue. If there's a proposed decision that needs to be reviewed, you navigate to it. You download the document and review as you do. And then, if you're happy with it, you just hit that adopt as proposed. And if you're not, then you would just communicate with the scopes unit or with Juliet in kind of the same way you're used to doing it now. So, not a great big change there. Just a way for everybody to kind of see everything and all collaborate in one place in the system here. So that brings us to rehearings. So rehearings here at CDSS, all the rehearing requests all more or less come to one group. That group takes them and inputs them into the system, and then determines where they need to go, whether they're going over to you at DHCS or whether they're staying here.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's you or somebody that's on the webinar, but I'm hearing a bunch of keystrokes. If everybody can mute their phones,
Yeah.
that'd be nice. Except you, of course. You can't mute yours.
Okay. I don't think that was me. But I'll be more conscious about not touching the keyboard. Sorry about that. But anyway, yeah. So they kind of come all into one unit here, and then they're initially processed, and then they're kind of routed to where they need to go. Once the rehearing request is routed your way over to DHCS, then there's this rehearing review external queue. And again, this all works really similarly to how it works now. There's a bit of a process within DHCS where all of the rehearings go to one unit, and that one unit kind of does a review to determine who those need to get passed out to. based on the division that they pertain to. As far as I know, that process is going to remain the same at least for a while. But because of the nature of the fact that ACMS is using the previous hearing appeal as the basis for the rehearing, the routing is not so much a secret or anything. It's known because this obviously is going to go back to the unit that had it for the original appeal. So really, the unit that kind of initially handles the rehearings and the unit that will eventually work that rehearing both can see the fact that it was requested at the same time. Really, the only difference is that the unit that only does rehearings is going to see rehearings for all of DHCS, whereas managed care, for example, would only see rehearings that were for a managed care appeal. Let's see. So I guess there you guys kind of do your own determinations of a rehearing. I'm not too terribly familiar with the inner workings of it, but the basic understanding I have is that it goes to your rehearing unit. Your rehearing unit passes it to the proper unit division, and then there's a review done there to determine whether or not essentially to grant the rehearing. And so that's really what you're seeing here on this screen. This is where you'd put in the notes. Yeah, the notes explaining kind of your thoughts, I guess, behind granting or denying. After that, you'll essentially choose an action, and the action can have several effects. On this screenshot here, you can ignore the sent for federal review. That doesn't apply to DHCS. Hang on just 1 second.
So I think this screen is when the rehearing's requested.
I know it's not on the screenshot,
okay.
but
Just
yeah.
okay.
I'll run through it. And
Okay.
all right, sorry about that. If the decision is to deny the rehearing, you would just select denied here. It would kind of close out the appeal, and that would be the end of it. The other two options, the rehearing on the record and the hearing to be scheduled, are just both, it's different ways of granting it, and I think that it's really up to the reviewer or whoever ultimately decides which way it's going to go. If there's reason enough to be able to rewrite the decision without holding the hearing, it would be rehearing on the record. If it seems necessary to hold a whole new hearing, then that would be hearing to be scheduled. So if we jump over here to the system, we'll do the initial request for the rehearing. So this is kind of what it looks like when our rehearing unit is initially putting these into the system. Let's go. We'll choose a document and save. So really all we did there was we just created the rehearing task that needs to, where'd it go? Did I close it? I might have closed it. Hold on. Let's try this again. Rehearing. Oh, it's still there. Filing date. That's how I did it wrong. Tomorrow. Okay, there we go. So at this point, we've entered into the system that a rehearing was requested, but this hasn't quite gone to you yet. So the next thing we would do internally is route it, as I mentioned earlier. So in this case, we're going to route it in this. It says scopes authority. That really just means DHCS. So internally, we'll select scopes, and from this point, it will create a new task, this rehearing determination task. And that is what should make it show up here. And it's not, but so the rehearing description, I guess this really should be something that the claimant entered. But essentially, this description should be filled out with whatever reasoning the claimant has provided, and then you should also have any attached documentation for the rehearing. So here's that rehearing request here. So you could download the documentation, read their written explanation, and select your action based on that. Any documentation they provide plus the written explanation, I think, is really all that's necessary to make that determination.
So all of the processing will take place off
Yeah.
ACMS.
So aside from being able to obtain the documents that were provided, any other process you go through to make a decision on whether or not to grant this rehearing is really an offline thing. So once you have all the information, you do your review, and then when you're ready to make a determination, you'll come back here and you'll select whatever your decision is. And from here, again, denied is just going to close it out. It's all done, no more to do. And then either grant will reopen the appeal, and the rehearing on the record is somewhat unique because that'll go to a PJ to assign to a judge to write the new decision. But the hearing to be scheduled, it'll either just go back into a scheduling pool to be scheduled as normal, or if there's any specific scheduling requirements, those can be specified and set as required. So that's really about it for rehearings. I did mention compliance earlier. So the compliance occurs after a decision is released where the order on the decision says that one of the agencies, DHCS or a health plan or whoever, has to do something. So the decision compliance queue is just a listing of any appeal where that decision essentially says that there's something that needs to be done. And there's not really a whole lot to this. A lot of the actual compliance is going to be an offline thing. And then once that's completed, there's the ability to upload a document specifically for compliance to an appeal, and then you would just close out the task, which would make it disappear off of that list, so that you can be done with it and move on. This right here is just showing that document creation compliance document, and then from the task you would select compliance completed and save, and that will close out the task. Are we doing okay so far, or is there anything you'd like me to go over in a little more detail? Or anything I totally skipped that you guys are interested in seeing? Or questions in general? Okay. All right. So, I guess I'll just do a quick recap. I sort of want to emphasize really how simple DHCS's interaction with the system is. Again, you log in you're presented with a screen that is intended to give you access to information as you need it. If you're looking for something specific, you can search for it. If there are specific cases or tasks that are assigned to you, you can find them. If you're somebody who's looking for new appeals that need to be assigned out, that's right there. If you handle rehearings, that's here. If you're worried about appeals that are scheduled, that's right on this one. And via any of these queues or via the dashboard search here, you can navigate to an appeal to see all of the detailed information about it, view the documents, check the hearing date, make sure anything you're concerned about is correct, or any information you need is there. And then just the fairly simple processes of checking the proposed decisions. Again, that's your portion of it, is really just seeing that a proposed decision is available to review, downloading the document, reviewing it, and saying okay, or contacting state hearings to say that you want an alternate decision. Not much else to it there. And the rehearings are really kind of the same. By the time you're notified, it's created. There's documentation for you to review. You do your review and you make a decision, and that's that. So really, that's about the extent of what your actual interaction with the system is going to be. It's really not too bad. So I did want to take a little bit of time to show the advanced search. So it was mentioned earlier in the slide about the release decisions, I think it was. But this is a tool for you to obtain information from the system that can be used for reporting, or kind of if there's a set of data that you want to see that's not contained within a queue, then you can do all that here, and it's a fairly simple sort of two-step process. The learning curve here is really understanding what you want to find and where that's located. For example, I want to see the case number. I need to know that the case number is part of this appeal object here. Likewise, the responsible agency, in this case, I'll select managed care. So what I did here was I added a criteria to my search, which is just to say that regardless of anything else, only show me things where managed care is the level 2 responsible agency. I can refine that further if I want to. I can specify a particular subprogram or scope of benefits subtype. Say I wanted a specific plan. In this case, that's a little redundant because if this one's true, this will always be true too, I think. But you get the idea. Say I wanted to see managed care division appeals where the appeal state is scheduled, or I don't know if there's going to be a lot of those. Let's go for pending scheduling, so essentially new ones. So when I do my search, right now it's just going to show me a big long list that says managed care division and pending scheduling, and I'm not going to see anything else because it's the only two things I'm searching on. So that's where you come to the columns here. The columns are additional informational columns that you want to see that don't affect the results of the search. They just affect the information you're shown when the search is returned. So things like case number, the claimant's name, we already know the program that's always going to be Medi-Cal, so we'll go probably sub-program, scope of benefits, subtype, end type. So anyway, so you build this list of columns that you want to see. These are sortable. You can do, ascending, descending on any of these criteria. And from top to bottom, this will display left to right. So the very left column right now on my search results is going to be this responsible agency level 2. Now, I specified as my criteria that I only want to see things that are assigned to managed care. So there's not a lot of value in actually returning this column in the report. It's just going to show me a column that says managed care a bunch of times. So by unchecking the box here, I can still search on that criteria, but it won't show up as part of my results. Likewise here, because I know I'm only searching for things that are in the pending scheduling state. Once I have that all built out, I can hit search. I want to allow this. And whatever that is just happened. There we go. So this is what I am presented with based on my criteria. So so it's really helpful if there's a particular set of data. You can specify date ranges for things. If you're looking for anything that was input into the system within the last 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is, you can do that. And this is an easy way to kind of keep track of things. If you don't, if you're like, well, how would I know about this or how would I know about that? You can always create an advanced search for yourself like this, and then you can save it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the Office of the Patient Advocate, and they have a report on complaint data that is published every year. Have you heard about anything about that?
Yes, I have heard of it, and
Basically, it just requires each division to report on the type of complaint. Mary can probably help me out with this, but with, if the person has withdrawn, if there's no jurisdiction, if it's overturned, and we also have to collect information on race, ethnicity, and gender, and it's kind of the specific data that is needed by the Office of the Patient Advocate and then published.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering if this correlates at all with that, or if they have said that they're going to be having access to this system and they can collect this information themselves, or if you'd heard anything about that.
So that was.
I don't think I'm sorry, this is Kathy. I don't think ACMS is going to have the gender, the ethnicity, the race, any of that.
It doesn't look like it. Yeah. This is Kathy Dobrin.
Yes.
Yeah, hi Kathy, it's Kathy.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, it's not going to have that kind of data. So we're still going to keep our CRN data,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
which is where we get our data for the OPA report. With conjunction of Gabe, and he's the one that goes and gets all the ethnicity and stuff from the data warehouse for us.
Yeah, we don't have a data warehouse to go to, so we end up calling people.
What about Gabe Hardigay? If you send him your list of hearing numbers and the data that you can pull, he can pull that other stuff. Like if you have to send, he could pull the ethnicity and the race and the language and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we don't. We go back to the Department of Social Services for that information because we're so small. We don't have any databases or anyone that we send information to.
So Catherine, what
I'm sure that would be the same for SUV and for other smaller divisions too.
So what we can provide, and I think what we provided in the past, is a list of the case numbers and maybe this dispositions, copies of decisions, things like that. But we have not traditionally collected that kind of data, ethnicity and things like that. So I don't know that, and ACMS doesn't do that. ACMS is really built to be an internal process for CDSS for managing the caseload, and then DHCS and other users interact with the system, as needed to make that workflow proceed.
Yeah, well, what we do currently is we just do our best, and so oftentimes we'll review, the documents that we do have access to, and we'll just put unknown, if we don't know the person's age, for example, or even their gender. Sometimes it's hard to know if it's a male or a female. And so we just do our best with trying to make determinations.
Yeah. I think the benefit you'll get from ACMS, though, is that you can at least do a search for all the mental health cases that are in the system, and maybe even filter by county. So you'll have a list, and the decisions will be attached there, so you can download them from there. But the biographic data, I guess is what we might call it, will have to come from somewhere else. Maybe like Kathy said, from that gentleman.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, Catherine,
pretty good.
you'll have the SIN numbers, right?
Only if it's on. We don't get SIN numbers here.
Typically, we just get the hearing request that's filled in on the back of the NOAA VDs. Notice of adverse discrimination.
I think
And when you're doing what you need to do with them, you don't like find out who the person is or who writes your SOPs.
We know who the person is. After the mental health plan. Yeah.
I think some of that information might come from meds. I know Kathy's group searches meds all the time, so we look at meds, but only so we can identify who the proper respondent is, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah, and we don't have access to meds. Anyway, that's not your problem. This is an internal problem over here. So I was just curious if you had heard anything about that report.
I have actually.
Yeah.
And the demographic data is not really as a basic feature of the software. It has the ability to do that, but it's not something we require, and we really don't anticipate getting a lot of good data from that ability. But as far as the statistics go, that we can do in large part. Part of it, we're kind of doing some stuff like that now. Those types of reports are not really, it's not very efficient to do those via advanced searches. So we do have other reports that are built out. For instance, they're kind of more like this, where this is an actual SQL-based report with layout and various other things, and this is compiling a whole bunch of information from the database, and you can see here that this is filings, hearings, how many were granted, denied, dismissed, withdrawn, conditionally withdrawn. So that type of information we are compiling and should be available for that purpose, but the demographic data, not so much.
Well, at least this information is going to be very useful for us.
Mm-hmm. And we do, kind of over time, we do have the ability to sort of improve the way that ACMS functions. Not only that, the data we collect, our ability to generate reports that specifically display data in a way that's helpful for a particular use. We're really kind of lucky in that we have the ability to do that and really do it in-house. We don't have to go out and contract to make those sorts of changes. So thankfully, any limitations that ACMS has at Go Live can be pretty quickly remedied. But yeah, so on a somewhat different topic, we do have a YouTube channel for the ACMS project. These are it's all the videos that have been created for training or for system acceptance, things like that. Some of them are better than others. Anything that was uploaded more recently is a kind of a better quality because they just kind of got better over time.
And more accurate.
And more accurate. There were some changes to the system over time, and so some of the older videos might not accurately reflect the way that the system looks now. But a lot of these videos are helpful as kind of supplementary to the training. Moreover, we are generating user guides for every set of users. So DHCS users will have their own guide, and that's going to be a step-by-step to kind of go through each of the various functions, all the things that we saw today, but in more detail than the PowerPoint gives you. All that will be available as well. Yeah, and so as far as if you have questions or concerns over ACMS's capability to do things, or perhaps process questions, process really are going to be obviously healthcare services is free to make its own processes. Whatever works best for you guys is fantastic, and then whatever interaction is necessary with the system, hopefully we can facilitate in a way that's best for you. So if you do have concerns or suggestions about updates or changes to ACMS that you feel would be helpful to the business relationship, we're more than happy to take those and work them in when we can. And some of that stuff isn't going to be obvious initially, but we do have an email inbox that's checked by several of us. That email is acms@dss.ca.gov, and you can send at any point you can send comments, questions, anything like that there. That email is not going away after go live. We're going to keep maintaining it as for both suggestions and comments, but also as kind of a help desk sort of email. So that is it's good to use.
This is Kathy again. Will you be having a user acceptance testing, an actual testing of the system, where we actually go in and do stuff?
So we've already completed the UAT, the user acceptance testing. So that was a pretty small group of people. We had essentially one representative from each group, and then some internal resources. One of the judges here, some of our customer service staff, that all did like end-to-end scripts in a separate kind of isolated environment that was intended for that testing. So that's been completed, and not every script passed, so we are still doing some work to correct that. But as far as just like if you're looking for the opportunity to kind of tinker around in the system and check things out, that's something if you're interested in we can set you up with.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Send an email to the ACMS.
Yeah, if that is something you're interested in, go ahead and just send an email to that ACMS email address that I gave you a minute ago, acms@dss.ca.gov.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess the only thing I have other than that is we are doing additional webinar trainings. I think I don't have a full list of them, but actually, yes, I do. I lied. So September 4th, it looks like, the 13th and the 14th, all have additional webinar trainings. So if anybody's interested in more training, feel free to attend as many as you'd like. I'm sure this was super riveting, but it's whatever you guys need to feel kind of comfortable with the system and your interaction with it. Not just the trainings, but but whatever you feel like you need in order to be kind of okay with ACMS and using it and how it's going to, help the business relationship between CDSS and DHCS. We just want to make sure that everybody's really comfortable with it. So feel free to blow up that email inbox, ask for additional trainings, whatever you want to do. Just, yeah, so with that, I'd like to just kind of open it up for any additional questions you guys might have. And if there are none, then...
Hi, this is Sino, and I have a quick question.
Yes.
I was wondering if the system's set up at all to send out, alert emails if there's anything that's due for, a particular person, for example, for our MHPs, the mental health plans. A lot of them don't really get any or many hearings at all, and for them to have to log in every day is not really practical. So would they get any kind of alert if they have a case that's assigned to them, or if they have a statement of position or something that would be due?
So presently, there's no email alert. Not for that anyway. So that is something we do with other things, and as such, it's not a huge deal to add an email alert for that kind of thing. But typically I kind of go back to, we've heard a lot of requests for these sort of alerts, but I kind of go back to the question of how urgent really is the work that you're needing the alert for. So I understand that these people, it doesn't make sense for them to log in every day, but they're going to have, 45-ish days to do an SOP, right? So
Not necessarily. In the case of expedited cases, we need to have an immediate response from the mental health plans, and the entire thing needs to be turned around in 3 days. And so it would be helpful if we could modify the system to somehow create alerts for plans that have been assigned to the cases. DHCS, I know for myself, being the lead on the mental health plans, that I would be okay with signing it every day and assigning the right mental health plan to the right case. But in terms of after that fact, it would be helpful to have an alert system.
Sure. That makes sense.
Scott's taking a note of that right
now. Sorry. Okay, that's a good point. So I've written that down. Are there any other questions you guys can think of? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you guys for participating. Again, I've left this up here just so that you have a chance to write down the additional webinars if you'd like to participate. If so, go ahead and sign up. And otherwise, have a great day. And don't forget to email your questions and everything if you have them. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.